Hey everyone, this is Doug from High Tech Life, helping you save some time and save some of your hard-earned money, and in this video, maybe trying to save you from a bit of unneeded stress in your life. So if you're into that sort of thing, click the like and subscribe buttons down below. Today we're going to dig into a home automation topic that's close to some of our hearts, including mine. And that's how can we use some of today's modern home automation solutions to help monitor the well-being of our loved ones if we can't check in on them every day. Maybe you have an elderly parent or someone with special needs who's living on their own independently, but you want to be able to just do a little bit extra to make sure everything is okay. Now, when people start to think about this, the first thing that they often think to themselves is, well, I'll just put in a webcam. And that lasts about a day in terms of actually providing a useful solution. If you stop and think about it, how does a webcam know if everything is okay? It's a dumb video feed. Are you going to remember to check the camera every few hours, every single day? What if the person's out of frame when you check the camera? Is everything okay, or are they just in a different room? Are you going to put cameras in every single room? And when you stop to think about it, cameras really aren't a great solution for this. And of course, there are a lot of privacy concerns as well. Most of us don't want to feel like a camera is watching us 24 hours a day. And rightfully so. So what we need is a system with some smarts to it. And that's where home automation comes in. We need something that can figure out when something might be off and give us a notification. And ideally, it should be completely passive and invisible so that nobody has to learn any new routines or charge anything or press any buttons or anything like that. And that's exactly what we're going to focus on in today's video. A passive home automation strategy that can help monitor a loved one and make sure they're going about their day as normal and let us know if they're not. Now, before we start, there are two important things to mention. First, it's important to note that this is not intended as a substitute for a proper medical alert monitoring service if that's what your loved one really needs. You've seen those commercials for a life alert or medical guardian system, those I've fallen and I can't get up platforms, where your loved one has some sort of pendant they can wear that can instantly connect them to a live agent if they need help. And so if you really have a loved one that really needs that level of help, you should get one of those systems. You can add something like this onto it, but please do not try to use something like this as a substitute for a proper medical monitoring system if that's what's needed. And then secondly, you should obviously only be implementing a system like this with the permission and awareness of your loved one. Just because this can be done in a way that's basically passive and invisible, that doesn't mean we should be doing this surreptitiously. All right, let's dig into it. All right, so our goal here is to monitor for regular activity patterns within a home, but without using cameras, and to get an alert if something isn't normal. To do this, we're going to need three primary components. First, we'll need a home automation platform, and this is going to be the brains of our operation, collecting and processing the data from various home automation sensors we'll deploy around the home. Second, we'll need those sensors to understand what's going on. If the platform is the brain, then the sensors are the eyes and ears of our system, and they emit signals when things change. And that could be anything from motion detection to a light switch being turned on or off, a TV being turned on and off, and even something as routine as turning on a faucet. All of these are routine and normal activities that we can intercept as indicators of normal activity if we have the right sensors. The third thing we'll need, and it's a key part of the system, is a way to build a countdown timer system. And this is where the magic really happens. This is what makes this type of home automation rather unique. And once you realize what you can do with it, you'll start seeing more and more use cases where you can put it into practice. So let's break each of these down and see how they work together to create our solution. For this project, I'm using an open source free home automation platform called Home Assistant. There are other home automation platforms out there like SmartThings, Habitat, HomeSeer, and others, and I've used a lot of them, but I think Home Assistant is very powerful, and the price is right, it's free. So all of my demonstrations here will be using Home Assistant, but you can likely adapt these ideas into other home automation platforms as well. And if you've accomplished something like that on another platform, please leave a comment below for others who might be trying to accomplish some of these same things. Now, to run Home Assistant, you provide your own hardware, install the free software, and there's no monthly recurring fee unless you want something additional like certain backups or certain types of network connections. You can run it on an old PC or something like this, a Raspberry Pi, which cost me about $75. And I've actually been running 3 of these right now for over 3 years in our home and 2 others in other family members' homes. So I've found them to be pretty reliable overall. Some people will say that a Raspberry Pi system is not reliable enough for home automation, but I'll leave that for others to debate. But no matter what hardware you run this on, it gives you 100% privacy, and your data is never in the cloud unless you want it to be. And most importantly, the future of your system is not at the mercy of some company's board of directors who might change their minds and cancel their line of home automation products, which has happened before. Now, if you're going to use your own hardware, the setup process for Home Assistant can be a little bit technical, but I'll walk you through that here in just a little bit ahead in this video. But there's also a pre-built solution from the Home Assistant team themselves called the Home Assistant Green, and it's available for $149 from Amazon. Or you can get something like this Zima board for the same price, which already has a Linux operating system installed on it, and you just go into the app store that's on there and you just click install for Home Assistant. I'll provide a link to both of these down in the options below. Now, let's talk about the sensors that will help us monitor activity in the home without being intrusive. These sensors are the eyes and ears of our smart home. So the key here is to use devices that will blend seamlessly into the daily routines of our loved ones and just disappear into the background of life. For a project like this, there are a number of different options to choose from. First, you might want to look into smart light bulbs like these. They come in various form factors and they look just like regular light bulbs. And it does what a regular light bulb does. It makes light when you give it power. But it's also got a little chip inside of it, and that will send out home automation signals like, I've just been powered on. Your loved one simply turns on the same light switch that they have for years. Nothing looks any different to them, but we can capture this signal and know that there's activity in the home. So you could put one of these lights in every room of your loved one's home, and all they have to do is turn light switches on and off, and that's how we know when there's normal activity going on. You could also use smart outlets like this one, which can detect how much current is going through the plug itself and sends out data about that. So you could use this for something like a family room TV that maybe only draws 5 watts when it's asleep, but 25 watts when it's powered on. Getting a bit more expensive, you could also look into something like a water flow monitor. I have one in our home, but I wasn't able to rip it out of my plumbing just for this video, so this picture will have to do. But I have this device in my own home, and it sits in line on the main plumbing that brings in water into our home from the street, and it monitors to see how much water is going through it. So every time someone turns on water to make some coffee or wash their hands or take a shower, brush their teeth, this device starts emitting telemetry about the flow rate in gallons per minute. Hopefully you're starting to get the idea here. These are all very passive and invisible things we can monitor to make sure someone is going about their day with lights and plugs and water. Your loved one doesn't need to do anything different than what they already do. Finally, motion sensors are a little bit of less of an invisible option because you can see that they're there, but these are pretty straightforward and they work pretty well. If someone moves in front of the field of view, it sends a signal saying it saw motion, and placing a few of these in key locations that a loved one would go to throughout the day, like maybe a kitchen or a TV room, is yet another type of telemetry you can collect to make sure everything seems to be normal. When you add it all up, when you stop to think about it, all of us really emit a lot of signals as we go about our day. If we have the right devices, you can pick up on that. So I'll provide some links below for some of my favorite sensors and switchers that I use for this, so be sure to check out some of those. Okay, now, this is really where the heart of everything begins, the timers. We talked about the brain of the main home automation platform itself, and we talked about the eyes and the ears, all those sensors collecting data. But we need to teach the brain what to think about what it's seeing. And we do that with countdown timers, kind of like this old school kitchen timer. You've seen these, you pick it up, you set it to 30 minutes and tick, tick, tick. and then the bell goes off. So we're going to build something just like that in Home Assistant. And what we'll do is we'll start the timer anytime any of our sensors detect activity. Or if the timer was already running, we'll restart it to the same starting value. And that's the secret to this whole system. Because if we keep restarting timers over and over again for every action in the home, light bulb on, light bulb off, TV on, off, water, motion, in theory it should never run down to zero as long as we select the right amount of time. And if they ever did run down to zero, that's something we want to be notified about. So let's describe an example. Let's say we put a half a dozen smart light bulbs in various locations in the family room, in the kitchen, on a bedside table, in a bathroom, in a closet. Typically, someone is going to turn lights on and off as they move throughout their house during the course of a day. So what we can do is maybe set an 8 or 12-hour timer, and every time one of these lights get turned on or off, we keep restarting the timer over and over again, so it should never ever get to zero. So if for 8 or 12 hours our loved one hasn't turned on any lights or on or off, we'll get to know about that. Now I know what you're thinking. 8 to 12 hours seems like a long interval, and you're right. But there's a couple of things to think about when it comes to figuring out timers for a system like this. First, we need to consider the fact that people do sleep at times, and maybe there's not so much activity to pick up on. Ideally, that's about 7 hours per day, so setting a timer to be less than 7 to 8 hours might result in some false alarms. But the more devices you add and the more variety of devices you have, you can potentially get these timer windows down to be even smaller. Okay, let's start walking through all the setups from start to finish. Okay, now the first thing you'll want to do is select your Raspberry Pi family and then go through and find the other general purpose operating systems that are specific to home assistance, home automation. Choose Home Assistant in there, let that go. You need to select your storage, your SD card that you've put in there, and then you just go ahead and write that, and it's going to write that out, and then you're going to go and you're going to start to assemble the hardware with the SD card in there, and once that's done writing, everything will just be able to go and boot and operate for you. The link for the imager is down below in the show notes. Okay, once you have the SD card written, then you just grab it, grab the motherboard for the Raspberry Pi, put the card in, make sure you get it right side up, and it should just snug right in there. You take the motherboard, you put it on the base of the case that it came with overall, make sure that kind of just snaps in there, and then make sure all little ports along the side also line up through the holes. And then you put the top portion of the case on and just snap it all together. And then it's pretty much ready to go. Some of the cases will look a little bit different from one manufacturer to the next on this, but they're all mostly the same. And then you just need to hook it up to power and network, and that's really it. You don't need video or keyboard or mouse, because this is just going to come up on your network, and then you'll log into it via a browser, and that's all you need to do there. So this is how you get it all set up. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've set up the Home Assistant installation. It makes you pick an initial administrative user password and some setup things there. You have to pick your location, where your house is, just you draw it on a map, and everything gets set up. And I've installed one of the home automation bulbs here. I picked the really big looking one on this overall. And so what you can see here on the screen is you can see that this vintage bulb here, this is listed as unavailable right now. The reason it's unavailable is because it's powered off at the power right here. So if I go and I turn this on, what you'll see in the display here is this vintage bulb will go from unavailable to on. And this could simply be somebody in that home, that loved one, just flicking on a light switch and going about their business overall. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to turn that back off. It takes a little bit for it to notice that it's gone off, but what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to create what's known as a helper here. And we're going to create a timer helper. And we're going to say vintage bulb countdown timer, and we'll just make this a bulb, and we're going to make this a 1-minute timer. Okay, and I'm going to go back to my dashboard here, and I'm going to add that timer And right now it says the timer is idle because it has not started out. Let's make this layout a little bit bigger there. Okay, so the timer is idle right now. Now, Home Assistant's not going to know automatically I should associate this timer with this bulb changing state. So what we have to do is we have to build what's called an automation. And this is where the brains of everything really kind of comes into this overall. So we'd go through and we'd start to build an automation. And the trigger we'll use for this is when a device, and I can just say my vintage bulb here, is turned on or off. And when that happens, what I can do is add an action in here. And I'm just going to say for a timer to start the timer, I'm going to choose my entity here, hit save on that, start timer with bulb on or off. Save that. And I will go back to my display here, and the countdown timer is idle now, so let's turn this on. It'll take a second for the system to recognize that the bulb is now available. And now we see the timer is listed as active. So what I actually probably need to do here is put in another entity where we can see the seconds remaining in this overall. So now you see there's 40 seconds remaining in this timer. Now, I set a 1-minute timer because we don't want to wait 8 or 12 hours for this video to go on, but you get the point here. When this timer goes down to 0, then we can go and trigger another action on this overall. So while that's going down, I'm going to go ahead and turn this off because that should make this go to the unavailable state. This usually takes several more seconds, so the timer might run out before we go and hit on that here. And then now that I have these pieces in place, the next thing that I'll need to do is I'll need to build another automation that will notice when the timer goes into the idle state, as it just did here. And whenever it goes into the idle state, then we're going to go and we're going to have the system send a notification to my mobile phone. And so that's how we'll go and get this set up here. So I'm going to let this go and see if the timer restarts. Once this goes into unavailable, there, it just happened. And you see that the timer now has restarted another minute on this overall. So again, imagine this being an 8-hour timer, and imagine having multiple light bulbs around a loved one's home that would go and do all these things. Every time one goes on, every time one goes off, this timer keeps restarting, and ideally it should never ever get down to 0 overall. And then if it does get down to 0, we go through and we're going to go and set that to create an alert. Okay. Now what we need to do is we need to make a notification. So we've got the timer set up to automatically start every time the bulb goes on and off. But when the timer goes idle, that's something that we want to know about. So we'll go through and we'll define an automation here. You see our first automation that would start the timer or restart the timer every single time. So we're going to create a new automation, and our trigger is going to be when the entity state timer goes from active to idle. So it was running and now it's run out of time. We set this for 1 minute, but you'd set it for 4 hours, 8 hours, whatever was appropriate for you. So when the timer runs down, then what we want to do is send a notification. Title, activity monitor, and then say no activity seen for 1 minute. Again, you'd make a longer time frame. Notify phone. Okay, so now our automation here says when the timer is active and then goes to 0, send an alert out. And so this is how we're going to want to go and monitor everything. So let's take a look at the phone here. Okay, So we've got all the pieces put together now. And so you can see on my mobile device here, this is the Home Assistant companion application, and it's got a display similar to what's on the desktop right now. So I'm going to go ahead, turn the bulb on. Home Assistant will notice that in just a few seconds, and then it's going to start our timer. There we go. It just started. You saw it on the mobile phone at the same time. And now what's going to happen is this is just going to count down towards 0 unless I go and turn the light off and back on again, which I'm not going to do. And so what you can imagine is doing a lot of these, not just one bulb in one area, but a lot of bulbs in a lot of rooms. And every time someone goes in, that's a sign of normal activity. And you can have different timers. You don't have to all have one timer that keeps getting reset. You could have a timer for each bulb or each motion sensor, and some might be 4 to 6 hours, others might be 12 to 24 hours, and you can build some really, really amazing patterns on this. You're really limited only to your own imagination in terms of what you can set up with something like this, given just what I've shown you, the Raspberry Pi, some free software, and a simple smart bulb here. So our timer is going to run out here in just a second, and then we're going to get our notification. And right on cue, you see the notification on my phone, no activity seen for 1 minute, because obviously this was set up as a 1-minute timer overall. So that's really how it works. You can go through and build all sorts of things for this with infrared motion sensors and water flow sensors and open and closed door sensors and power monitors and light bulbs and all sorts of things like that. And that's it. That's all it takes. This setup is exactly what I've done for one of my loved ones, and it's been incredibly valuable in terms of giving me a little bit of extra peace of mind. Through some smart use of home automation, you can create a powerful and privacy-respecting way to keep an eye on those that you care about, but without being intrusive. It's a fantastic example of how technology can let our loved ones maintain their independence and provide family members with peace of mind when we can't be there with them all the time. This just took a Raspberry Pi for about $75 and my home automation bulb and some free software, and that's all you need. So if you like this video and if you'd like to see some more things like this, be sure to click subscribe down below, as I'll be making more of these videos on how to use home automation to make our lives easier. Until then, we'll see you next time.